Hello, this is Rob Detmering, Humanities Librarian at Ekstrom Library. This is the first video of 2 videos where I will go over some strategies and resources that will be useful for your research in English 102. In this first video, we'll look at Google and Google Scholar, and in the second video, we'll look at subscription library databases. In both videos, I'm going to focus on how to go about researching current popular culture artifacts, such as films or television shows. This kind of research can be challenging because scholars might not have written much, if anything, about recent movies, for example. But there are still effective ways to approach this kind of research. In fact, working with something from current pop culture can make it easier to construct an original argument or perspective because so few interpretations exist at this point. In these videos, I'm going to use a recent science fiction horror film, The Color Out of Space, as an example. The film was released in late 2019 and was directed by Richard Stanley and stars Nicolas Cage and Joely Richardson. It's based on a 1927 short story by H.P. Lovecraft. Now, if I'm looking for sources on a film like Frankenstein or Dracula or even Night of the Living Dead, there will be numerous sources because there is a long scholarly history of looking at these particular films and of looking at vampires, zombies, and other monsters. The film I've selected, though, is very recent, so we may have to think creatively about how to do this research, especially when it comes to finding scholarly or academic sources. So let's start with Google, typically the first choice of most people when conducting research on just about anything for school or life in general. I'm going to start with a search for The Color Out of Space, Richard Stanley. I'm specifying the name of the director to try to find sources related to this film and not sources about other films or texts with that name. As we see, I find a lot of different types of content through Google. There are videos, including movie trailers and an interview with the director. There's an Internet Movie Database page that gives me basic information about the film, as well as a Wikipedia page. There are reviews from popular websites and options to stream or purchase the film. All this stuff can help me learn about the movie, contextualize it, understand how it's being received by the audience, and more. But these are not scholarly sources, which are written and evaluated by experts as part of what's known as the peer review process. Peer-reviewed sources often don't show up in a typical Google search, and even when they do, we can't always read them in full because they're very expensive and live behind paywalls. You might have seen paywalls with other sources as well, such as the New York Times. So if I want to increase my chances of finding scholarly sources through Google, I can jump over to Google Scholar at scholar.google.com. Google Scholar is like the academic version of Google and searches across the web for citations to scholarly or peer-reviewed sources. Let's run the same search for The Color Out of Space, Richard Stanley. Unfortunately, because the film is so new, our search results are pretty much entirely irrelevant, just as we might have suspected. Even if we limit to articles published since 2019 or 2020, we don't find anything. I get some articles on Stanley Kubrick films, so that's the wrong director, not what I'm looking for. This isn't surprising because the peer review process can take months or years. So what do? Here's where we need to start thinking creatively. I know this movie is based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, so let me try a search for The Color Out of Space Lovecraft instead of Richard Stanley. Okay, so now I have a lot of articles because the story is older and scholars have been writing about Lovecraft for many years. These articles aren't about the new film, so I have to keep that in mind, but they could still be very useful in helping me think about how this story has been interpreted and analyzed in the past, themes or ideas in the story that might be important, and so forth. And these articles could also help me think about how Richard Stanley might have addressed similar ideas in his film, or perhaps gone in different directions. The idea is to find sources that speak in some way to the film I'm interested in, even if they're not about the film itself. We're going to expand on this kind of approach to researching pop culture artifacts in the next video. Before we conclude, I want to point out a few things about Google Scholar. Not everything you find here will be peer-reviewed, because Google uses a broad and somewhat fuzzy definition of scholarly. Also, most articles, including those from many of the most influential and important journals, are not freely available to read in full. Publishers make a lot of money selling subscriptions to academic journals, so most journals are not freely available online. Finally, aside from the publication date limiter and a few other tools, Google Scholar doesn't give you very many options to narrow your search. In the next video, we'll see how library databases can help address some of the challenges associated with free search engines like Google Scholar, including how library databases provide access to the full text of scholarly articles.